whoa, gaming. Come
No,
on now,
let me
bro.
pause. I get to ask a question. Hold up. I'm gonna let him reclaim his time. Let me ask him a question. What is, because I don't know what the totality of circumstances definition is. Can you give me a brief summary of that, and then you can have like.
I mean, bro. All right, come on, gaming. Really?
The totality of circumstances is exactly how it sounds, from the perspective of everybody there, the officer, the individual themselves, and then the reasonable officer test is whether a reasonable officer would think that their use of force would, one, stop the threat of death or bodily injury to themselves or to others, and be able to perceive that threat as a reasonable officer. So, for example, if somebody was getting shot at from the north and they were under siege, getting shot at from the north, and they started shooting into a mall to their south, would that use of force be justified in stopping the threat coming from the north? No, it would not. And in this circumstance, we saw Jonathan Ross use force to kill Renee Good because, in the best case or best faith scenario, he perceived her brandishing or progressing with a dangerous weapon, being her car, towards him when he was violating policy to begin with by shooting at a moving vehicle that was moving towards him. I don't have it on hand. I honestly wasn't expecting to do this debate right now. I could get it. A reasonable officer would not perceive that them shooting a vehicle that is already moving towards them and potentially killing the driver, would have would stop the threat, the qualifying threat for the use of force. So, and as we saw in the video where the car veered off, the car did not stop once she was shot. The car drove off, hit something else. Two, all the videos I've seen, Jonathan Ross most likely had his hand on the vehicle, put his phone on the vehicle, potentially was clipped by the vehicle, but I'm not convinced that he was actually hit by the vehicle. I think he very well could have just stepped more to the side or allowed her to drive off. They had already recorded her plates and arrested her later. To that end, I think this was unjustified and doesn't meet the standard for self-defense or use of force.
All righty now. All right, game. What was you about
Hold
to
up,
say,
he
brother?
has some extra. No, I was getting ready. I wanted him to explain that, because if we're gonna have a debate, you also got to lay out your definition so that not just the people that are moderating can have a firm foundation of what you're saying, but your audience can too.
Yeah, but I think
it's a way to have a fair and honest debate. So that
yeah, but bro,
I mean,
come on now, though. Like I think a lot of people understand the totality of the evidence. I mean, that's what me and Parabolic was debating over a couple days ago. So
yeah, but look at, everybody is not us. So for the viewers at home, and people do view your stuff after it goes live. So I also want to point that out. So you are doing good on like after live view, post live views. So just so it's out there and on record, both sides can present their cases the way that they want to and have definition and actually sound intelligible by what they're saying, instead of just saying, these buzzwords that may throw off people. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel what you're saying, but let's not try to interrupt them, because I want to throw them off their point. That's all.
Okay, and then the next thing is make sure to give Sid his time back.
All right. He had his time. He had like 4 minutes.
Yeah. Now go ahead, Monty. Go ahead and respond to Sid.
So first of all, Sid is not a reasonable officer. He's not a police officer. He's never claimed to be a police officer. So the whole reasonable police officer or another reasonable officer argument that he's trying to make from his own experience does not really. He kind of hung his hat on that no reasonable officer would do it. In fact, they're right after this shooting, there was another video of a car driving at a police officer who shot, and it was determined to be a good shoot. And there have been several police officers, including the detective that broke this down, that said that it was a good shoot. So reasonable officer, it only really takes a couple of reasonable officers to say, yeah, people all across the country kind of agree that have any sort of understanding of the law, and the Department of Justice's use of force policy that Sid is quoting is 16-200, 1.16-200. And he is describing a policy that says that you cannot shoot into moving, fleeing vehicles unless the vehicle is coming at you. And the vehicle was coming at him. He did not place himself in front of the vehicle. She placed the vehicle in line with him when she backed up and set her tires in his path. We have established that several times on this channel alone. So with that being said, he doesn't have to ninja flip off the hood of the car to try to avoid the collision. He doesn't just die because he violated policy. Even if we can concede that point that he violated policy, which I'm not willing to concede, but even if we did, he doesn't have to just die because someone's trying to run him over and he violated policy. He walked around the vehicle several times. So his indication was she's just going to sit here and be an asshole and obstruct law enforcement. Not she's going to take this a step further. No reasonable officer would have believed that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have walked in front of the car. I don't think Jonathan Ross decided, you know what, I'm going to step in front of a moving vehicle today so I can shoot somebody. Which is what the claim that Sid has made that this is murder before. That's what that would require, and it doesn't meet any of those legal definitions. It doesn't meet the definition of murder. It doesn't meet the definition of excessive force. The only definition that it meets is the one of self-defense. There's 4 aspects of self-defense. 1, you're protecting yourself. 2, you're protecting somebody else. 3, you're having a felony committed upon you. Or 4, you're having a felony committed in your home. Those are the 4 things in which any one of those could be met to justify lethal force. And you have 3 of them that are met. Assault with a deadly weapon is a felony. She did that. Whether you want to acknowledge that she might have been trying to drive away, she committed assault with a deadly weapon because it's not about what you intend to do, it's about what you actually do. His partner was in imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury because his arm was still in the car when she decided to drive away. So condition 2 of lethal force is met. Condition 3, himself. It was met when he said, or when she decided that she was going to aim her vehicle at him while he's standing there. You don't just get to drive away and say, fuck the pedestrians that are in the road, because you don't, like, we've had several arguments about whether protesters should be run over, and they shouldn't have been in the road. That doesn't mean you just run them over. So 1, 2, and 3 of the lethal force continuum have been met. She has motive, means, and opportunity to run him over. She tried to, and he shot her. The fact that she didn't initially, immediately, the vehicle didn't just spawn out of existence is irrelevant. Why? Because she eventually stopped when she hit a pole. She wouldn't have stopped.
And time. All right. Shout out to Monty for that one. Now, Sid, we're going to go ahead and bring you up for your 4 minutes.
Okay, so real quick, I want to talk about what we're not talking about. We're not talking about what a jury is going to find. We're not talking about, basically, we're not talking about what a jury is going to find. We're talking about what we think of this. I could very well concede that a jury might find this not to be murder. It is my opinion that this is murder. Murder is an unjustified killing with malice aforethought. Malice can be established in a split second. Doesn't require premeditation for a day, anything like that. And for this to be a justified use of force, you have to look at the totality of circumstances. That includes all 3 shots, 2 of which were taken through the side window after he had stepped aside. Those would be looked at in a court case. Those, even if I grant the first shot, are harder to establish justification for. Because what I said the first time, this doesn't stop the qualifying threat. the vehicle, and no reasonable officer would believe this, has no reason to stop moving if you shoot the driver. It has no reason to protect him or his fellow officer if the driver is shot because their foot is on the gas. They can now not take their foot off the gas. They cannot press the brakes. They cannot stop the car. They cannot turn it off. That is why the policy exists. The policy wasn't created out of thin air. And another aspect of the totality of circumstances, as we can see, and as I said in my first statement, from Jonathan Ross's point of view, we can see Renee Good turning away from him. Yes, to flee. Wrong thing to do. She shouldn't have done it. But they had her license plate already. They had taken it down. What gaming wanted us to do in the first debate is say what the officer could have done instead. And in this case, it's very clear and very simple. And we could move on after this. Well, yeah, after this, after Monty makes his statement, we can move on to the PRETTI one. Mm-hmm. But what could have been done is Jonathan Ross could have stepped to the side. She could have driven home or right down the street to park to let her wife get back in the car, or allowed themselves to be detained, or driven home and allowed themselves to get arrested the next day.
All right. Shout out Sid on that one. All right, now let's go ahead and bring in Monty for his response.
So first point, he liked to hang his hat on the quick succession argument, and I think he either is completely oblivious to what courts have allowed, and adrenaline and heat of the moment and stopping the threat are all factors. So typically courts have held that if you follow up with multiple shots, it's either they all are or none of them are. So all of them are justified or none of them are justified. So that's the first point. And I've already established that through the three methods of use of force, that all of the initial deadly threat and use of force was authorized. So all of them are. So none of this trying to wrench at heartstrings. Oh, 2 shots were fired through the window. Yeah, it's deadly force. You make sure the person's dead. That's what the word means. And then secondly, it doesn't. None of what he's saying makes any sense in any rational thinking person's. You don't let fleeing felony suspects just leave. You don't. You do what you can to stop them. Now, he did not step in front of the vehicle to stop her. He walked in front of the vehicle to go to her driver's side door to pull her out of the car to support fellow law enforcement agents. And when she did that, or when he did that, she decided to drive away. He's in the way of her driving away. That doesn't mean you just run somebody over. I don't care how hard you turn the wheel. She still hit him. And you can see in the video that he pauses for a second because he doesn't realize, or he realizes something's about to happen and tries to move out of the way. And still, the first shot goes through the front windshield. That's the fatal shot. That's the one that hits her in the head. So he's just arguing on semantics right now because he moved the goalpost to, I don't think a jury might acquit him, but it's murder in my head, and malice can be determined in a second. None of that matters. We're not asking what Sid thinks. We're asking, was this shoot justified or unjustified? Sid said it was unjustified. That was the premise of the conversation, and he's losing the debate now now he wants to move the goalposts. I'm not going to let him do it.
All right. Shout out to my man Monty. Let's go ahead and bring up my man Sid. All right. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, what Monty was saying about if one shot's justified, all of them are justified. I mean, it's just facially ridiculous. Even going to the PRETTI one, let's say the first shot was justified. Let's say they all mag dumped in him and then all reloaded and started mag dumping in him more. Would any court, would any jury find that reasonable? No. And according to Barnes v. Felix, we do have to look at every application of use of force, which means every shot, not necessarily every bullet. He is right. Heat of the moment, that type of stuff. But if the qualifying threat is eliminated by the first shot, the second shot, the third shot, or you stepping out of the way simultaneously with that, then those shots come into question. These things are analyzed and have been analyzed at the Supreme Court. And it's just absurd to say one shot's justified, anything after that is justified. That is not true. That is not true whatsoever. And he didn't prove that, and he's not going to disprove it when he gets his turn again. I think we've run the course on this, and we're not making any ground on it. We can stay on this one, or we can move to PRETTI. I'll let him decide when he speaks.
All right. All right, then. All right. So Sid is
wait,
up to Monty.
Wait. Intermediate. Since Sid actually performed a good clash, I'm gonna ask that Monty at some point, it doesn't have to be immediately now, but at some point he bring up some type of evidence to support his accusation, because Sid made a valid point. He didn't have any proof to prove that one shot.
Well, I mean, any real proof that if one shot's valid, all of them's valid?
Yeah, that's a fair argument.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you. That is all right. Then let's go ahead and bring down Sid and give it to Monty.
So first of all, I did not say that you can mag dump somebody, reload and mag dump. So the barrier to that test, forgot what the case was, but I believe it's a stand your ground case. You do not get to mag dump and then it's a reasonable force to stop the threat. The threat being a motoring vehicle barreling down a slick road towards protesters now. So that threat hasn't been eliminated. He fires 3 times and then stops shooting. He has 17 rounds in that gun. He didn't even mag dump. He shot 3 times in quick succession. And so the fine motor skills that require you to shoot versus did I hit them? Did I not hit them? Have I stopped the threat? Have I not stopped the threat? As soon as the vehicle is pulling away from him, yeah, he fires 2 more shots into the vehicle and then stops. So obviously, I wasn't speaking on if one shot's they're all good. I'm speaking in a totality of the circumstances. She is now driving away. He's not continuing to throw rounds through her back window. So we're talking about reasonableness. It's reasonable to come to the conclusion that either 1, you got the threat, or 2, they no longer meet the force triangle. And once they don't meet that, he stops shooting. So what is it that I haven't proven? That is a matter of interpretation and subjectiveness. So the subjectiveness shows that he did not use excessive force. He shot 3 times. Maybe the first shot missed. Maybe the second shot missed. Maybe the third shot missed. We don't actually know. But so the laws specifically require so you cannot have follow-up shots when you have a fleeing suspect, when the attacker has surrendered or the threat has ceased. So when the suspect became a fleeing suspect, he stopped shooting. The attacker never surrendered, and the threat was never ceased until she hit the wall. So the legal standard to stop the threat is the continued threat. The justification for firing ends when the threat is neutralized. If an attacker is knocked down, drops their weapon, and ceases to advance, further shots may be viewed as excessive. That didn't happen. She kept her foot on the gas. Adrenaline and effectiveness in high stress situations, attackers may not immediately stop, even after being struck, if under the influence of substances or wearing protective gear. Therefore, multiple shots are often necessary to achieve a, quote, stop. And there's no magic number. There's no legal limit on the number of shots, only that each shot must be reasonable under the circumstances. And reasonable is a subjective term. So I reserve the right to say that the shots that he took and the lack thereof the shots that he took were a reasonable amount of shots, well placed enough to stop the threat. The threat being her plowing through the crowd that had formed around her. So we're not talking about the threat of the officer anymore. Now we're talking about the threat to the public, because this is a fleeing suspect that has already hit an officer. So Reasonable, she started going off to the side and hit the pole. Oh, I don't need to shoot her anymore. She's either deceased or she's incapacitated. Now she's crashed her car. So he didn't run up to her window and start dumping mags into her some more to stop her. So that is what I would call reasonable. The threat was neutralized.
All right, shoot, 5 seconds to spare. And all right, shout out my man Monty. All right, let's bring up Sid because apparently Monty still wants it on this topic. So go ahead, Sid.
Okay. I realized I didn't address a point he made in an earlier argument about other officers and LEOs talking about this use of force and agreeing that it was valid. There are also multiple videos of law enforcement officers criticizing it and even arguing that there was officer-created jeopardy on part of Jonathan Ross. That being said, Monty made some claims there that have not been established and that I do not agree to. One, that he was hit. That has not been established. I do not agree to that. And I think the New York Times analysis that we watched, where they paired all the videos together, shows that the sound of him being hit most likely was him slamming his phone onto the hood of the car. Second, I think that another thing that hasn't been established is that she posed a threat to the public. And if that is established, if that is a qualifying threat, there's no reason to believe that shooting her would stop that. She was not plowing through like a parade like Daniel Brooks. She was not doing that. She was leaving the situation. There's no indication that she was going to plow through a crowd or that she was going to run people over and start driving recklessly, and no reasonable officer would believe that. She backed up and started turning her wheels away to drive away, not in any radical way, not in any rash manner. Her wheels slipped up a little bit on the ice, but she was not going very fast, not at all. And it's just as likely that she was going to pull off the road and let them continue, move her car. Should she have done that? We could get into that. No, she shouldn't have. She should have turned her car off and got out. That's what she should have done. But what should Jonathan Ross have done? I've already made this case. He should have stepped to the side if he felt he needed to. I don't think he needed to. At most, he got clipped. I don't think that's been established, though. And then went and either arrested them later, charged her later, or waited to see what she would do next. You can't say that he thought that there was a qualifying threat to the public to the extent that he has to shoot her, which doesn't remove the qualifying threat. In fact, it creates like a torpedo, a 4,000-pound torpedo that is driving off without any control. And he had no reason to believe it would drive off and hit a pole. Luckily, it did. She could have slumped over and turned the wheel towards him more. That's why a reasonable officer would not believe this would eliminate the qualifying threat.
All right, now quick question here, and then I will go ahead and bring in Monty. And I'm not going to give you any pushback on it. But did you hear about Jonathan Roth being hospitalized for internal bleeding?
I think that is bullshit. Just to be quite honest, I think that is a cover-up. Internal bleeding is a bruise. We saw the video of him after. He was walking fine. He wasn't limping. You could say it's adrenaline or whatever, but I think that was a cover-up to say, oh, look, this guy was actually hurt because Trump came off, firing off the hip, saying, it's amazing that he's even alive, which is it's just absurd.
All right, I just had to get your thoughts on that one. Go.
I have another fair question in the same spirit before he moves on to before he moves on to Monty. So, taken into the totality of the circumstances, couldn't have been that in the moment he and RENEE were both experiencing an adrenaline spike, and that he probably wasn't aware of his injuries until after the fact, because that has a medical documented record of things like that happening.
By could, do you mean is that likely or is it logically possible? Because if that is that logically possible, yes, it is. Do I think it's likely? No, I do not.
Okay. All right.
I just wanted to get your thought on there.
All right, now let's go ahead and bring in Monty.
Right, so we don't get to what we don't get to do is disagree with facts. The fact is that he was hospitalized
Huh? Oh, bro, the mic turned off completely. Monty, like your mic turned off completely, brother. I don't see no sound coming from it.
While he's doing a technical glitch, can you go ahead and resend the StreamYard link so I can join from my laptop?
Sure,
And Rumble.
I got you. And Rumble, oh yeah, I got you. But okay, Monty's back. Perfect. I'm gonna bring you back in real quick, my brother.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you were at 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
What? Okay. So,
Yeah.
I don't know what you last heard, so I'd like to start over.
Oh yeah. Oh well, yeah, that's absolutely fair. Actually, go ahead.
So, I'm just going to reiterate. What we don't get to do is we don't get to dispute facts. That is a matter of fact. You can dispute opinions. That's what a debate is. But the fact is, he has been reported to have internal bleeding. I don't know what Sid's medical expertise is, but internal bleeding is not a bruise. Internal bleeding is organs or blood vessels that have ruptured. A contusion could be considered internal bleeding if you're really trying to stretch, but internal bleeding actually has a definition. So all of that to say, you don't get to argue with facts. And if he had any sort of even just a hematoma, that indicates he was hit by a car. So you don't get to determine that he wasn't hit by a car because we have proof that he was hit by a car. Now the shots in quick succession, we can beat that to death all night long, but the Supreme Court and lower courts have always held that multiple shots are authorized, especially in a heat of the moment situation, which was what this is, especially after there's an adrenaline dump, which is what happened because he was hit by a car. Just because you don't like the fact that it looks bad for you doesn't mean you get to dispute facts. That's all that I have to say about that.
All right. All right, shout out my man Monty. All right, Sid.
Yeah, I think that I will totally concede if they, and maybe this has happened and I haven't seen it, but if they show his medical records, if they show the visit, like that's all they got to do. But I'm not just going to go off claims from CBS News, Barry Weiss News, and the Trump administration. I mean, I'm sorry. You can say that's bad, that's wrong, but it's not a fact because we haven't seen any proof. We've just heard assertions of it. And I made a lot more points that Monty didn't address in my last time talking. So I'm assuming that means we should move on to the PRETTI one because I don't know that there's more to go on this. We're beating this to death. We've heard this debate a million times at this point. So
yep. All right, then I agree. We can go ahead and move on to the Alex Petty one, and I will go ahead and do you want to take the opening statement on this one or give it to Monty?
I'll give it to Monty.
All right, because you made the opening statement
if he wants it.
All right, Monty, you want the opening statement?
Gotcha. So when he loses the debate, we've beat it to death. Got it. So I'll take the Peretti. Peretti was not lawfully carrying a firearm, was engaged in hostile acts towards law enforcement. He wasn't, brandishing said firearm that he was carrying unlawfully, but your chances of dying in a situation like that go up significantly when you have a firearm on you. Not saying that he deserved to die. With the benefit of hindsight, which is not the standard that you apply to situations like that, with the benefit of hindsight, no, the officer would not have shot, should not have shot. But that's not the world we live in. You live in the officer's perspective based on the totality of the situation. The totality of the situation is you have a violent person that is resisting law enforcement, that has obstructed law enforcement. When attacks on law enforcement are up 1,300%, when you have people like Sid that will say everything that happens is murder, yes, that is the totality of the situation. The totality of the situation doesn't mean you get to just cherry pick all the facts and say, oh, he didn't have the gun, so let's base all of our assertions on that fact. That's not how it works. You have to look at everything. You have to look at the officer's try to understand the officer's state of mind. Is it reasonable to say my fellow officer has yelled gun, and now there's a gun in the situation, I'm going to shoot because I just heard a round go off? That is completely reasonable, and it has been held that it's been reasonable in prior cases.
All righty. And shout out to my man Monty, leaving at least 2 minutes on there. All right, we're gonna go ahead and bring up Sid for the response.
Yeah. So I'll actually make one last point on the good situation. It's not totally substantive, but something I hope we all can agree on is that there should be full, independent investigations into both of these two things. Today it came out that there was body cam footage that the CBP officers have. They were wearing body cams. And I think we should all demand that be released to the public because it will give us much more insight into what happened. If we can agree on that, that is the main point I would like to drive home in this debate. This impromptu debate, by the way. Second, I don't consider from the video I saw Alex PRETTI to be a violent person, to be committing violence against the CBP officers. And the point about his gun is totally irrelevant. Whether or not he had his ID while he was concealed carrying is totally irrelevant. But to briefly touch on that, from what I've seen, that's like a misdemeanor that carries like a $25 fine with it. And the right in general is totally fine, has been historically totally fine with people bringing firearms to protests. There are countless examples.
Yeah.
What I saw in those videos was Alex PRETTI being there with his phone out, recording. There was video of him directing traffic before, and then there was video of law enforcement coming towards him and the two people surrounding him. Law enforcement pushed one of those women down, and he went to help them up. At that point, they were both pepper sprayed, and he keeled over. When he keeled over, he was then jumped on by the officers around him. They started hitting him and pushed him to the ground. There's a still image. I know Bovino, who, rest in peace, lost his position today, disputes this analysis of still image analyzing this. But you can see the officer that fired and his line of sight, seeing his fellow officer remove the gun from the holster on his back. You can see it. I can send it in the Discord when it's not my turn. I'll send it to Set, and he can bring that up. Then,
all right, go ahead.
While Alex PRETTI had both his hands on the ground, one holding his phone, they started unloading shots into him. I think it was around 11 shots. Maybe I'm wrong on the exact number. I'm frankly sick of watching the video. It disgusts me. But in other videos, you see ICE agents clapping along to the shots. Maybe it's adrenaline. Maybe. But at what point did they have fear of imminent death or injury? Alex never went for his gun. He never grabbed his gun. It's irrelevant that he didn't have his ID. It's irrelevant that he had 2 magazines. Monty seems to be almost a Second Amendment absolutist. I've heard him say there should be no gun laws. For him to invoke that in this situation is just bad faith, and he is playing team sports, the very thing he accuses me of doing constantly.
All righty, with 18 seconds to spare. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and bring in Monty in, and on a quick fact-checking note from the RENEE Good. So yes, bruising is a form of visible internal bleeding where the blood vessels break beneath the skin, causing blood to leak into surrounding tissues without breaking the skin. So yeah, I mean, if we're talking, if he got bruised, I mean, I guess we can't call that a form of internal bleeding, and this is according to the Google search that I did.
Real quick, that last 18 seconds, I'm going to send you something on Discord. That's my last 18 seconds.
All right, perfect. All right, now let's go ahead and bring in my man Monty.
Before he
So,
responds, I'm sorry. Give him his time back. I was trying to say something. I'm also looking into on a fact checking note. I am also looking into Sid's claim on it just being a bruise. He
So
said that
let me clarify what I said. A contusion is a bruise. Ecchymosis is a bruise, and it is a sign of internal bleeding. So
Okay.
that's why I said it. Maybe if you want to be completely disingenuous and say that he has internal bleeding, you could say a bruise is internal bleeding. But that's not the colloquialism known to everybody. And
yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly. In the rule of medicine, nobody would call that internal bleeding. We're looking for actual sources of bleeding from usually an organ,
yeah, and so what
from
I'm going
blunt
to
trauma.
so I'm on the Department of Homeland Security's website, and they had actually addressed this, and they did say that when they got him back to the hospital, he did in fact have signs of internal bleeding, though light. So this is from the DHS website.
So, for the record, you treat all internal bleeding as serious until proven otherwise. Just
Mhm.
just for clarification, like that'll move you up a step in the Washington trauma system at least. If you have bruising to the box or like seatbelt signs or anything like that. I hope I'm not running my time right now, but I'm just trying to clarify a point of fact that is
Oh no, you're good. I'm
debated.
about to start your time now.
So the first point I want to make is Sid made a claim. I don't know if it's true or not because I didn't have enough time to look it up. But not identifying yourself is sure it's a misdemeanor, but assaulting a law enforcement officer while you're armed carries a $40,000 fine and 30 years in prison for one. So it's not this minor jaywalking charge. For two, resisting an officer while armed is a $10,000 fine in Minnesota, and it's a felony, potentially reaching 20 years in prison. Why? Because we consider these things to be dangerous and violent. Why? So when I say dangerously and violently resisting and impeding, that's what I mean. Because both of those charges concurrently carry a 50-year sentence and a $50,000 fine. Because we don't want the public doing that. And why? Because it puts the public and the person that's doing it and the officers around them in risk of life or limb. What are we talking about? The use of deadly force. When is deadly force authorized? When the risk of life or limb is put into question. Now, it has been carried that the officer does not have to see the gun, and we can sit here and say, "Oh, Sid saw it clear as day." Sid wasn't there. Sid has this benefit of what do we call it? Hindsight, and can go back and freeze frame and be a freeze frame social justice warrior. That doesn't mean that this was an execution. All it means is that a mistake was made. And when you deprive people of sleep all night long and harass them, a mental emotional toll gets taken. And you can't sit here on one hand and say it's okay to do all these things, and then sit on the other hand and wonder why mistakes are made. The only mistake that I see being made in that situation, and we've flushed this out before, is that the officer that actually secured the weapon should have said, "I have the weapon secured." That's the only thing. But he reaches back. You see him in the video reaching back for his gun. That is when he is shot, right after they already hear a gunshot go off, which we think is the P320 that, has a history of going off without the trigger being pulled. So it doesn't, it really does not matter. Like all of these things that Sid wants to do and look at all these different angles. The cop only had one angle. He has depth perception and straight on vision, not an aerial view, not a lateral view, not a left lateral view. He has what he sees in front of him, and what he saw in front of him was a man reaching for a gun that is being violent. We've already established that those two things are violent crimes: resisting and assaulting with a weapon. So you have a violent suspect that is now reaching for what you think is a gun because a gun's been yelled, and then you hear a gunshot go off. That, in its totality, the totality of the circumstances, including ICE officers being attacked at an alarming rate, gives reasonableness to the use of force. End of story. And I'm done debating it.
All righty. All right, Monty.
Okay,
said-
so let me get some clarifying points in here. I am on the official Minnesota State